Please note that this video is opinion based and should not be taken serious. Fate Apocrypha is bad. If you're someone who's tried to delve into the Fate series, then I'm sure that you've heard this at one point in your life. Fate Apocrypha is bad, leaving you wondering if it really was that bad. To start off, Fate Apocrypha is neither terrible nor bad. If we're talking general anime, manga, and light novel quality, then Fate Apocrypha would land around the average side. However, it's when you put it next to other Fate series that it starts to look ugly, feeling like it's the worst one out there. But what exactly went wrong with Fate Apocrypha, and what could have been done different? If you're not aware of what the Fate series is all about, the Fate series generally has this premise of a holy grail war, where you have 7 mages teamed up with 7 servants, spirits, who then all go out at each other on a massive battle royale. Fate Apocrypha, on the other hand, sold itself as an even greater holy grail war, between not just 7 pairs of masters and servants, but between 2 teams of 7 each. We were gonna see a battle of 14 pairs. But did it actually fulfill what it promised? While it might have had a promising start, it soon became obvious that Apocrypha wasn't going to give what it promised. Tell me, if you were to tell someone about Fate, how would you sell it to them? If you answered servants, then you're right. The biggest hook that Fate has are its interpretations of legends throughout history. There's pretty much a different servant for every person. But if that's so, how did Fate Apocrypha fail with such an incredible cast of servants? While servants might be the hook, it turns out that what generally holds people's attention is the masters. You probably heard this about Fate Apocrypha. Mordred and Kyrie carry the show on their back, and that's not an understatement. Despite having been sold as a grand war between 14 masters and 14 servants, the reality is that you can count with a single hand the amount of master and servant pairs. Mordred and Kyrie, Siegfried and Gorgs, Chiron and Fjord, Fran and Cowles, and Jack and Reka. I know what you're saying, but Georgigo, there's more masters than just that. You're right, and there might be, but they are completely inconsequential. Most of them appear for at most 2 scenes to deliver 1 or 2 lines before their final scene where they're killed off. They might be masters, but they pretty much act as background characters. As for Sieg and Shiro, despite being masters, they act closer to extra servants than actual masters. So, despite being sold as a grand holy grail war bigger than all others, it actually turned into just a battle royale of power. Whereas in other Fate series, even giants can be beaten by careful syncing and strategy, Fate Apocrypha removed practically all of its strategizing for servant fighting. There's actually a cool moment early on where Kyrie and Fjord are fighting each other while Chiron and Mordred are busy with each other. And that kinda shows what we could have actually gotten. But instead, masters were quickly removed off the picture and become just a slugfest of servants. The only exception being Mordred and Kyrie, who remained together until practically the end. We already know that masters took a secondary seat for the story. So how were the other characters done? As I mentioned before, Apocrypha had one of the best casts for servants. Achilles, Atalanta, Karna, Vlad III, Semiramis, Shakespeare, Spartacus, Astolfo, and many more. And yet, there's already a problem you're seeing with this cast. The beginning of Fate Apocrypha was actually pretty good and promising. We were actually getting what seemed to be the grand holy grail war that was promised, and even among the teams, we were already starting to see the familiar cracks of betrayal all around. In other words, Fate Apocrypha's start was really good. But then...
自分を犠牲に。
I'm sure you've heard this to death. However, I'm not sure everyone fully comprehends the damage the Sieg caused to the story as a whole. Before Sieg, the show felt like an actual Holy Grail war. Masters were preparing, servants were testing each other, and even inside the teams, alliances and rivalries were already forming. It was all setting up for this big clash. And Sieg was like throwing a wrench into a delicate balance, completely destroying whatever semblance of a war we had. Suddenly, out of nowhere, even though a few episodes and pages had already gone by, we had a main character. Not just any main character, but a main character belonged to neither side, and right from the start had already gained the help of not one, not two, but three servants, Siegfried, Astolfo, and Jan. This one character, having done nothing other than running around, had already gained the approval of three servants. Now, that in itself wasn't the issue. Astolfo, Siegfried, and Jan are very heroic characters that will back up the underdog. The issue was the aftermath. Siegfried is already dead. Without actually doing anything relevant, he's just gone. Worse yet, he didn't go out in a spectacular way. Instead, we saw a servant we didn't care about, sacrificing himself for a character we literally just met. That's not how you do storytelling. Then Astolfo was punished for getting Siegfried killed. But the punishment isn't actually relevant, because Astolfo is perfectly fine to fight in the next battle. Speaking of next battle, and Fran is dead. Really? You already killed one of your only master and servant pairs. Oh, but that's fine, because Fran's death was just for the convenience of powering up the main character Sieg, because now he can be resurrected by Fran's noble phantom for some reason. Glad to know that everyone exists solely to make Sieg stronger. Oh, and Astolfo's master? Yeah, Mordred took care of her. Apparently these masters are too stupid to know how a Holy Grail war works, and think that just stepping into the battlefield won't get them killed. Oh, but it's fine. That was just a one-liner master that died. Nobody cared about her. Now, I wonder if her death will be in any way better, and Astolfo is now Sieg's servant. Oh my god! What is happening? This entire war is becoming a convenient event where Sieg just grows stronger. At least Mordred is still epic and slaps Sieg around for the trash that he is. Surely there won't be a moment where she'll be talking with him as an ally. You're starting to see the problem here. The story started off well. Different characters were interacting with each other, loyalty was being tested, and dynamics were being formed. But it came down crumbling the moment Sieg entered the picture. Now it's all about who is the next one to die that benefits Sieg. And this is what I mean by the damage the Sieg caused. The story went from an actual Holy Grail war into a bad fanfiction power fantasy. It doesn't help that 2 out of the 5 servant master pairs are already gone. Like, we're not even halfway through. But it's fine, right? Even with the Black faction in shambles, there's still some servants and masters left. So surely we'll focus on them and how they can recover and not focus on the walking cardboard box. And it just became a romance. Lovely. So despite the fact that there's an amazing cast of servants, we're not even going to focus on them. We're just going to focus on Sieg having his horny trip with horny Jan and horny Astolfo. Okay, enough ranting. As you can already tell, the characters in Fate Apocrypha might have looked good at the start. However, the moment Sieg took the screen, they all became stepping stones for Sieg's story, meaning that we would barely ever see them interacting with each other again like they did in the beginning. Sieg has effectively become the leech of the story, sucking everyone's potential, and for what? And that's probably the worst part. If Sieg was at least a developing character, then I still believe the show would have been salvageable. However, how Sieg ends and how Sieg starts, there's practically no difference. Did Sieg fall in love with Jan during his journey? No, it was pretty much love at first sight. Did Sieg learn the value of life? Not really, he already wanted to live from the start. Just what did Sieg learn? That traps are fine too? And that is the biggest issue. It's not like Fate doesn't do this with other main characters too. Shiro gets multiple power-ups, Kiritsu gets to own everyone, and Hakuno gets to trample on others. But at least they were actually trying to survive and win. So when they got lucky, it felt deserved. In Sieg's case, everything from the start was just lining up for him. The fact that his luck isn't rank EX is the biggest lie of the character. In most Fate series, the plot is generally straightforward. While there might be twists here and there about the true nature of the Grail, generally speaking, the plot is simple. It's people trying to kill each other for a prize. With such a simple plot, then most of the content has to resolve around the characters interacting with each other. In other words, rather than concentrating on a grand plot, Fate generally focuses on smaller plot points, such as betrayals, trust, character conflicts and drama, etc. And what about Fate Apocrypha? Well, I mentioned before, Sieg pretty much trumps everyone's else drama, so instead we were stuck with mostly Sieg's conflict, which is horny moments with John and Astolfo. Yeah, I can clearly see the moment where the author started writing with only one hand. Okay, I'm being unfair here. There are some other conflicts here, such as the Homunculus rescue mission from Sieg, which should sound epic on paper, but it's difficult to feel anything about them when they were pretty much just getting killed off like nothing with no consequences or ramifications. I mean, I get it. For Sieg, it's a big issue, but at least the author could have actually made it look like a big issue from Sieg's perception. It doesn't help that the homunculus themselves were just kinda... they were pretty much just dolls. Aside from Sieg, they didn't have any uniqueness to them. At least the homunculus mates from Fate's Day Night had their own quirks. These ones are just... There's also the fact that since the story is solely focusing on Sieg, now there's multiple scenes where masters and servants have this big moment of revelation, as if we, the audience/readers, should know everything about their goals, even though we haven't seen them ever since Sieg showed up. By the way, what's happening in the Red faction? No? We don't get to see that? Alrighty then. Yes, please keep the best character dynamics away from the screen so that we can focus on more horny John and horny Astolfo. Hey, remember Assassin of Black and her master? Oh, you don't? Oh, that's normal. Instead of actually showing their origin story, I'm just gonna throw that into the trash so that we can just skip into fighting. Hey, let's have this female master give a talk to Sieg, like she's an important character, even though this is like her, I don't know, third scene she's had during the whole show? Ugh. I don't even care about anything anymore. Just get me out of this hell. I'd rather be watching two blank slates having imaginary battles with each other in their heads. When you have to make a unique category just for a character. So, I've heard this argument before. But Giorgio, Sieg is meant to be like this. To which my reply is, I know. And? Some seem to misunderstand and think that just because something was done on purpose, it actually makes it okay. The reality is that I can write about thoughts on purpose. That won't change that it's about thoughts. In Fate and Type Moon, main characters are generally the most unique. Generally in stories, the main character is someone who's carrying a heavy burden, and the Holy Grail War is there to both flesh out that burden and also help the main character overcome it. Sometimes they aren't even able to overcome it. In Fate's Day Night, we have Shiro and his survivor's guilt. In Fate Zero, we have Kiritsugu and his delusions of heroism. And in Fate Extra, we have Hakuno with their existential crisis. But what about Sieg in Fate Apocrypha? He was clearly chosen to be this way on purpose. It's clear that the author wanted to follow the tradition of having a main character with internal conflict and burden. And in fact, you might not believe it, but the one who wrote the idea for Sieg was Nazu himself. Fate Apocrypha sided with Sieg, and Sieg was pushed the most by Nasu. But it's clear to me that you can't just have an idea for a character and then give the job of writing that character to another person. And that's clearly what happened in Fate Apocrypha. Let me ask you this, what is Sieg's conflict? Freedom? His brothers and sisters? John? Human's true nature? Humanity's survival? If you answered all of this, then congratulations. You just realized that Sieg is all over the place, where his conflict and burden are constantly changing to what's convenient to the plot. At first, his conflict is freedom, but once he gets it, he quickly throws it away. Now his conflict isn't just his own freedom, but also the freedom of his fellow homunculus. Okay, so he joins the Holy Grail War to give them freedom. Oh, but now that he's in the Holy Grail War, the freedom of his brothers and sisters just doesn't look that good anymore. Now let's have him question human's nature. Not good enough? How about human survival? Oh, still not enough. Let's just throw John in there for good measure. Like, stop. Just stop. Pick one and move on. Stop changing what his conflict is to suit the story. It doesn't help that his personality is practically unchanged throughout the story. Not only that, the changes he's had doesn't even come from his own merit. For example, Sieg is initially cowardly, but when he fuses with Siegfried, he suddenly gains Siegfried's traits, becoming brave and heroic. That's right, Sieg's traits aren't even his. They were given to him by someone else meddling with him. Sieg's questioning of human nature? Well, that's because of what he sees from Jack the Ripper's illusion. So instead of it happening because, oh, I don't know, some horrible human doing something horrible to him or someone else that he watches, it happens because Sieg just looks at the past of a servant. Ah yes, Sieg could have literally just picked a history book and it would have had the same result. If I had to change one thing about Fate Apocrypha, it would be between two options. The first option is to remove Sieg entirely, and instead focus on the actual war and its characters' dynamics, essentially having a completely different story from what we got. The second option is to not make Sieg the main character, instead only show us what's happening with Sieg here and there, but instead focus on other participants. We would keep the story practically the same, but now you would actually get invested in the story. Unfortunately, as much as Nazu liked the idea of Sieg, it was just not well implemented. Sieg would have likely worked in a completely different premise. I mean, Hakuno from Fate Extra is in many ways similar to Sieg, and generally people like Hakuno. However, Sieg only worked as a downgrade for a story that already had a good promise, and only ended up delivering nothing. And that was my take on Fate Apocrypha. You would hope that there were many more issues with Fate Apocrypha, but sometimes all it takes is one problem and the entire story can be ruined. And in Apocrypha, that's exactly what happened. Despite not being able to deliver what it originally promised, it still had some good dynamics here and there. If only it didn't spend so much of its time showing off a character that nobody asked for. But that was my opinions of Fate Apocrypha. What about yours? What do you think about Fate Apocrypha and what would you change, if you change that anything at all? This is George again, and thank you for watching. If you enjoy my content, leave a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Until next time, bye.